Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back with another installment of the complete Doctor Strange. So, if you've been following the previous videos, which I assume you have, we started in 1963 with Strange Tales 110, and I've showed all the Doctor Strange issues from that point up until we get to issue 41 of Doctor Strange Volume 2. Now, that came out in 1980, so we've covered 17 years so far, but we still have a ways to go. Today, we're going to be doing Doctor Strange Volume 2, numbers 42 to 75. Now, this series ended with issue 81, so I realize this might seem a little strange to end with just a few issues left, but I'll explain that when we get to the end of this. Now, most of this run is going to be covering the Roger Stern era, so I'm very excited to talk about that. Although it has been quite a while since I've read most of these, so I'm not sure exactly how much I'm going to have to say about it. But really excited for that. Before we dive into it, just want to mention real quick that I'm going to be at a convention soon. So I've got the Plastic City Comic Con in Leominster, Mass. coming. It's on Saturday, July 20th. It's at a new venue this year, so if you've been there in the past, you still want to Google that, Plastic City Comic Con. It's actually, I'm optimistic that this is going to be the best venue yet. Very easy to get to right off of Route 2. This is one of my favorite shows of the year. Last year, I got sick at the convention after like an hour and a half and missed almost the whole show. And I know there were some people that came to the show to see me or buy some of my comics or get them signed or whatever. And I'm sorry that I missed you because of that illness. But fingers crossed, hopefully everything will go well this year. So that's, again, it's July 20th in Leominster, Mass. Plastic City Comic Con. So come on down and check that out. But enough about that. Let's get right to Doctor Strange. Where we left off, we're in 1980 with issue 42, a very, pardon the pun, strange era on the book. I've mentioned that for me, for a number of years, this book is sort of wandering in the wilderness after Englehart was unceremoniously dumped after issue 18. We get one weird and forgettable run after another. Now, the regular artist on the series at this point is still Gene Colan, who is great. And yet, I don't know, starting to feel a little bit tired for me personally. No, it's blasphemy, but also these issues are written by Chris Claremont. So if you haven't read any of these, that's probably sounds like a very strange team. Chris Claremont writing with Gene Colan pencils on Doctor Strange doesn't seem like something that would exist, but it did. In addition, these do have some really cool covers, which seem to be by Michael Golden, as best as I can tell. I haven't looked up any kind of credits on these, but I'm just eyeballing them. So could be. This partnership actually runs for a while. Started back around issue, I don't know, 37 or 38, and there was a storyline that we finished the last video with. And that all continues here. Here's issue 45. This one's got a Dave Cockrum cover. And this is the last issue, I think, with that team. It might have even been the previous one. 46 is like a fill-in issue. Not a very good cover. Don't know who the artists are on this. But then with 47 and 48, we get a sea change. And here's where the book changes directions and, for me, starts getting really good again. 47, we have a very forgettable cover by Gene Colan. Not one of his best by any stretch. Just not great, kind of all over the place. But Roger Stern takes over writing with this issue. I'm a big fan of Roger Stern. I think he's one of the best writers of the 80s. And beyond. He's a very solid writer. He always writes good, compelling stories with good characterization. So people might not, a lot of people maybe don't consider most of his stuff to be like top tier. There's some Spider-Man fans that really like his writing, but otherwise I don't really hear Roger Stern bounced around a lot. But for me, he's one of the best. He's a great professional writer. I'm a huge fan of his run on Avengers. This is the first issue that he takes over as writer. And then on issue 48, it's interesting because even though the new writer comes in on 47, it's on issue 48 that we get this blurb here that says, beginning a new era of greatness. That's because Marshall Rogers takes over as penciler with this issue. And that blurb is 100% correct. Now, a couple things I want to mention here real quick. First of all, the book is still bi-monthly. The book was basically bi-monthly for the entire run, pretty much all 81 issues. I feel like there was a period at the beginning where it got popular enough very briefly, I think, to maybe go monthly. There might have been a couple periods later. I'm not even sure about that, though. It was mostly bi-monthly for the whole series, which is why, even though the title ran for like 14 years or whatever, it only got up to issue 81. The other thing is there was a creative team that was teased at this time that did not happen. So I don't have it here to show you, but there were house ads at the time that were promoting that Doctor Strange was going to be done by Frank Miller. That didn't happen. But you can still find those Frank Miller drawings saying that Frank Miller is coming to Doctor Strange. Don't know what that would have been like. But instead we get this run with Roger Stern, and it's really good. Like, the book gets much better, and it feels much more modern. With the Chris Claremont, very dense script, which is how Claremont works, and the sort of moody Gene Colan art, which turns muddy, I think, because of the printing quality and the coloring. Like, his art in black and white is amazing, but like with the printing and the way it's colored, it kind of gets muddy. This feels like it's suddenly become a modern book. Like, this is where it turns to it's the 80s now, and it's everything's sharper. The writing gets slightly more decompressed, not even close to what it will be 20 or 30 years later, but the pacing just feels a little more relaxed and a little more natural to me as someone who started reading in the 80s. So we get this great run of stories here. There's some really cool stuff. Here's 49. We get some really good covers on these stories. Here's issue 50. Another thing I'll note here is that this is the last issue with the Marvel Comics Group banner. That's actually not true. I said that, and I'm actually seeing it on one or two more. But they briefly ditched the banner. I don't know if it was a test run, because you can see here in issue 50, no banner. No banner on issue 50. Then there's also no banner on issue 51. This is the month where they had the 10-speed bike, so that's the same month that X-Men 137 famously came out. And we get this storyline with Clea. Now, one thing that Roger Stern does is he actually develops Clea as a character. She's been stuck for the entire series, for all these years through the 70s, as Doctor Strange's lover and apprentice. And so she's like clearly a level below. She's almost like a sidekick, because it's not just, if she was just the romantic interest, that would be one thing, but she's also another wizard who's not as good as he is, and he's teaching her, right? So the character, I think, kind of suffers, but we get this storyline here where it goes for a little while here. Let me just keep showing you these really cool covers. I love the detail work on this. Another Marshall Rogers here. We have this time travel cover where Doctor Strange goes to the past and interacts with the Fantastic Four and Rama Tut during Fantastic Four, the events of Fantastic Four number 19. This gets revisited again a few years later in a West Coast Avengers time travel storyline, where the West Coast Avengers end up in the same time period, and they interact with both the Fantastic Four and Doctor Strange as part of the same story. So, I mean, that's fun considering, of course, Rama Tut is a time traveler, but they keep having more and more people show up into this same story. But here's where Doctor Strange goes back to Fantastic Four 19. And then here's a really great cover with Doctor Strange and Clea. And basically, during this story here, I think it might even be in this issue, but again, I haven't read it for a long time. Clea ends up leaving. She goes back to her home dimension because she's got stuff to take care of there, and she's like, in order to like progress beyond just being Doctor Strange's apprentice, she needs to break out on her own, and also like the relationship's kind of gotten stale, whatever, because of their imbalance in power dynamic. So she leaves. So Clea's gone, but she'll be back in one of the best storylines in the whole series. I really appreciate how Roger Stern is handling the character as an equal, where she's basically like, I gotta get out of here. Like I've got main character energy, but I'm a supporting character, so I'm just gonna split. So here's issue 55. Now, Marshall Rogers ends up leaving the book, but don't worry, he's replaced by another great artist of the 80s, and that is Paul Smith. Now, Paul Smith, at right around this, not yet, but shortly after this, is going to take over X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. But he does some great work here, and I just love these issues. Here's 57. This run is just a good read, you know, it's just good comics. 58. '59, and now we're gonna get to a really, this is a part of probably Stern's most famous storyline here. Another thing that Stern does, sorry to backtrack, but Claremont was doing this a little bit too, but we're getting these multi-part storylines going on, which gets a little tricky because, like I said, it's still bi-monthly. But here's a really big one, and this is the Darkhold storyline that it culminates in the destruction of Dracula and all the vampires in the Marvel Universe. And this goes through a number of issues, and then it's like the story was coming out just before Marvel started doing these branded events, like these line-wide events. There's a couple of almost like prototype events that take place just before like Secret Wars, or just after Secret Wars, right around that time. So before we start getting things like, you know, the Mutant Massacre, or the little symbol saying that, you know, Secret Wars 2 is crossing over in every comic. Just before comics got to the mega event, there's a couple sort of secret mega events that didn't have any of the branding. One of them is this. So this Dracula storyline crosses over into other comics, into X-Men, where Dracula appears. I think it's in issue 159, maybe. It might be 160. Into Thor 333 and a few others. You can see here, though, that this is an Avengers crossover because the Avengers have the Darkhold. Because the Scarlet Witch had gotten the Darkhold in Avengers, like whatever it was, 86. And so they had it in their mansion. Dracula battles the Avengers here and steals the Darkhold. And we get just a great story. Now, Doctor Strange, we saw in the last video, had fought Dracula before in a crossover between the two books. So they're old foes, but at this point, Dracula's series had ended, right? So Tomb of Dracula had ended, Marv Wolfman's run over, and so Dracula's sort of a free agent. And so this storyline also does, along with some stuff going on in X-Men, sort of ties up a bunch of the loose ends from Tomb of Dracula when it sort of ended fairly abruptly. 62, another really cool cover. I think this is the end of the storyline, but we get Doctor Strange and Dracula fighting here, but then their astral forms fighting at the same time. Just a great storyline. 63. 64. These are all good issues. we get some sort of one-offs here, setting some stuff up, some character work. 65. 66. I love the use of zipatone or whatever it is on this cover, with the character in the shadows. Really cool cover. Um, 67. Here's 68. Again, I'm a big Avengers fan. So here is a story that I dig quite a bit, which is the Black Knight sort of being reintegrated into the Marvel Universe. Now, a couple years before this, the Black Knight had been, through the whole Bronze Age, his soul was stuck in medieval times. It was stuck in Arthurian legends. And his body had been turned to a statue and smashed. But in Avengers 225 and 226, he was finally brought back. His body was restored. And so the Avengers were like, we're going to leave him alone. He's got a lot to process. He's been stuck for 5 years fighting in the Crusades and all this stuff. So we're going to let him be. Well, he finally sort of rejoins the Marvel Universe in this storyline where Doctor Strange is kind of helping him through some stuff. Now, Doctor Strange and the Black Knight were old friends because way back in Volume 1, there was a Black Knight storyline in Doctor Strange that crossed over into Avengers 61. So I really dig this storyline, which sort of leads into Black Knight rejoining the Avengers in whatever issue that was, 255 or whatever, around there, where he rejoins the team, which was right when I started reading. So the Black Knight rejoining the team was right at the same time that I started reading Avengers, so he was sort of my intro character. And here's another Black Knight, issue 69. So I'm a big fan of these, but then this storyline is great. So I will say some of these are by Brett Blevins. I think he might be doing interior art at this point too. I'm not really sure, and I, generally speaking, really don't like the art of Brett Blevins. Sorry. I look at it and I think to myself, I should like this, but I don't. However, I love this storyline. Basically what happens is Doctor Strange goes into the dark dimension, and the storyline is basically all about Clea is leading a revolution against her mother, Umar, who has taken over the dark dimension because she's the sister of Dormammu. And so, and Dormammu is missing. So Umar's taken over, and Clea is leading this sort of rebellion, this underground rebellion resistance to Umar. And so Doctor Strange comes in here, and he's sort of helping. He's trying not to step on Clea's toes. She's clearly in charge because she's sort of, she's the daughter of the queen. So she's sort of now there's a very different power dynamic when they're in her world, because she's the heir to the power of Dormammu. And so, but he's trying to help her without sort of getting in the way. And there's all this really cool sort of revolution stuff going on in the dark dimension. It's really cool. And the story goes on a while. Here's 72. And then 73, I think, is the climax of the story. And again, I'm not a Blevins fan, but it is a really cool cover where we have Doctor Strange down here battling the Faceless Ones. And then sort of up in the skies, we see the huge images of Clea battling Umar. So great storyline, and kind of a great way to end the Roger Stern era. So that basically is the end of what he's doing. We get a couple of one-offs here. 74 is the mandated Secret Wars 2 crossover. Before I get to that, actually, I just want to mention that I don't actually remember which of these issues was my first one off the stands of Doctor Strange. but I think it was this one. So this is right around the time I started reading. I didn't get all of these when they came out. I think because it was bi-monthly, I missed some issues. It was kind of harder to find. But anyway, um, I probably got this because I did get all of the Secret Wars 2 crossovers, and that story was crap. I had missed Secret Wars 1 because I started reading comics right after it. And so, but I knew what it was, and there was all this hype about it. So Secret Wars 2 was like, now it's going to be my event because I'm in on the ground floor, and it was poop. And then 75 has a really cool cover by a young Mike Mignola. When I pulled this out, I realized that I actually had him apparently sign this at some point when I met him at a convention. I don't have any memory of doing that. But here's Doctor Strange 75, signed by Mike Mignola. And the series is about to be canceled because 81's the last issue, but we're going to stop there. So Stern's off the books, and starting with 76, this is what we're going to cover next time, which is going to be the last part of this series of Complete Doctor Strange. Peter B. Gillis takes over. Now, I mentioned last time that I kind of wish I'd been further along here because just at the beginning of last week, I think it was, I heard that Peter B. Gillis had died. So at the time I'm recording this, just within the last 10 days, Peter B. Gillis passed away. And I'm a big fan of his work, actually. Strike Force Moratori, fantastic. But his run on Doctor Strange, which I'm going to talk about next time, is, for me, second only to Ditko. Much as I love the Stern run, and as much as I appreciate the classic Englehart run, and I realize there's very few people that share this sentiment, but for me, what we're going to talk about next time, the Peter B. Gillis run on Doctor Strange, is second only to Ditko, and maybe actually my favorite run, including Ditko. Much as I love the Ditko stuff, I just love this story from Peter B. Gillis. So next time we're going to be all about Peter B. Gillis's run. That's going to cover Doctor Strange 76 to 81, Strange Tales volume whatever it is, 3 at that point, 2, 3, numbers 1 to 19. And then I'll talk just briefly, because I don't have them anymore, about Doctor Strange Volume 3, issues 1 through 4, which Peter B. Gillis also did. But again, I don't have those anymore. But that's what we're going to talk about next time, and that'll be the end of the Doctor Strange run. So, I love the Stern stuff. If you haven't read it, you got to check it out. But let me know what you think of these issues down below, and I'll see you next time.